So he's done all of this experimentation. He's participated in all these programs. A lot of them didn't work, but is there something positive in that for other people that it didn't work? And the answer, I suppose, is yes.
Yep, yep.
Does it
Yeah,
does it make
the
you feel
fact,
any better?
in some ways, yes. I mean, it's still terrible that he passed away, and it's a little, has really doesn't have much to do with our grief about him. But yes, I mean, it's a positive thing that up until the end, he was fighting like crazy, and he was, if he couldn't do it for himself, he was helping other people.
Welcome, friends, to the eighth season of Bereaved But Still Me. Our purpose is to empower members of our community. I am Michael Lieben, and the father of three children, Idan, Sapir, and Liel. Liel, my youngest daughter, was born with a heart defect and later developed autism and epilepsy. Losing her at 15 is what has brought me here to be the host of this program. Our guests today are Elisheva and Michael Lahav. Elisheva and Michael met in Israel 53 years ago when they both traveled from the United States to Israel and made Aliyah. They met in a foreign language class for new immigrants, fell in love, and married soon thereafter. They were new immigrants, soon welcoming a new baby to their family when war broke out in Israel. Uri was a beautiful baby and the first of four sons. Elisheva and Michael's sons are named Uri, Lior, Yair, and Ziv, all of whom grew up bilingual. Thank you both, Michael and Elisheva, for joining us here on Bereaved But Still Me.
Glad to be with you.
New country, new family, new life. What was Uri like growing up?
We'll put it this way, two of our kids were relatively easy to raise, and two were nightmares. He was in the first category. He was just relatively easy. He was the most gorgeous thing you've ever seen with dimples. I don't know where he got them from. Not from my family, not from Michael's family. Blonde hair, gorgeous, gorgeous blonde hair, very athletic, bilingual, as you said. And sports just pretty much seemed to be his thing, the way he was going.
What kind of sports was he into?
Tennis, yeah, swimming, basketball, folk dancing. And the big thing that's been playing a big part in our lives the past week, because we're recording this now when the Olympics are on, judo.
Ah,
And he wanted to be on a basketball team starting in second grade, but they told him that he was too young for it. And they said, but we've got judo classes. Why don't you do that? Well, nobody in our family really knew anything about judo. As you know, it's not a big thing in the States. So he started with judo and he just absolutely loved it. And I will never in my life, no matter how demented I will be, forget the day that I saw him take some strange kid, and just flip him over onto his back. Like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Yep, yep.
I can
And
absolutely
he,
relate to that because on French Hill, where we both are neighbors, judo is very, very big. And I
yeah.
remember the first day Idan took judo and he went home screaming, I can't believe I'm in judo.
Right, absolutely right. And he did it all through elementary school and high school. And he used to help his coach when he was in high school with the younger kids. And he was a qualified instructor from our national sports school, the Wingate Institute. There's an institute here called El Halev, which basically teaches martial arts to women.
Uh-huh.
And he had another part-time job of being the one that they would beat up. The mugger. Yeah, he was the mugger. And and we only found out very seriously at his funeral. One of his kids was talking about this, that he used to take a double dose of Advil before he would go to the go to work
Oh,
out with the women
wow.
who would come and try to beat him up, so that pain would be less for him.
That's unreal.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
really like that. I really like that he did that. I love the
yeah.
story.
And he never told us that, and learn interesting things about your own kid at his funeral.
I'm so sorry you had to find out that way, but I think it's a great
Yeah,
story.
yeah,
It's a great
right.
story.
Yeah.
So he was your firstborn. How did that change your life? Again, let's go back over this for a second. You're new immigrants in a new country, learning a new language. How did the addition of a boy change your life?
Well, it was more difficult to sleep, and it sort of made the it was like the first real fulfillment of the Aliyah. I mean, we came strangers, we met here. All of a sudden, we're building a family. Like, what are we doing here? Why are we doing this? Like we're new to begin with, and now we're doing it here. My
Yeah,
God, what have
yeah.
we gotten into? It was like scary. For me, it was scary.
Did it did
Being a dad for the first time and not really speaking the language, it was bad news.
did it
I
did it
remember I remember for the first few years that we were here, I would wake up in the morning and say, "What am I doing in Israel?" And then it turned into, "What is Israel doing in the Middle East?" So, and that we learn more about every single day of our lives here. So,
Oh, I know, I know. Believe me, I know.
yeah.
Did you find though that having a baby sort of solidified, there's no way back. You're not going back to the States when you already have raising a family here. I mean, it's become much more solid. Did you find that?
Well, there have been times when we thought about leaving, but we never did it. We went on a sabbatical one year about when he was 4, and his next brother was a year, I guess. And we came back after a year because it wasn't what I expected it to be. So I started to do a doctorate in Philadelphia at the Wharton School of Business in the University of Pennsylvania. And after a year, we decided we're going home. So we came home.
That's
Yeah.
dedication. I think people who make Aliyah, there's a certain breakout point at 2 years and then 5 years, and then maybe again at seven, where people sometimes just run out of steam. I got to imagine it's hard with kids. I got to imagine that. So now Uri has been with you for a number of years and he's grown up. And what makes him special? Who is Uri Lahav?
Oh, he was such a social person. There were a bunch of kids that were so together in school. They were in school from, I don't know, first grade till
Till he died.
till he died. Yeah, a ton of them came to the funeral. They were a very, very close group, very special group, and Rory was pretty much the center of it. I still remember when they were doing folk dancing on the street, and it was like 16 girls and Rory. And I remember once they had the graduation ceremony, and the kids put on a play. And Uri's job was he was I forget exactly what his role was, but I remember he gave birth to a chicken.
No, he
That
was an Ethiopian woman giving birth to a chicken. It was
right.
so idiotic, but so typical them. I don't know.
This was
And Uri,
elementary school?
No, 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 no. This was
Oh,
this
high
was the end
school.
of 12th
high
grade.
school.
Yeah.
All right, all right.
And Uri judo was a really big part of Uri's life. He was very dedicated to his coach, and he was dedicated to teaching kids who were not really athletic. He would bring them onto the mat and through games, like for kindergarten kids, and then through judo fights for the older kids, he just got them involved. And it made us very proud that he was able to, through sports, to get some of these kids more involved in their lives.
I was a teacher for a long time, and I think one of the things that comes out from this is I taught television. It doesn't mean I wanted kids to become great television producers and directors. It would be nice if they did. But the ulterior motive was learning how to work in a group and learning how to make group decisions at an age when people really can't do that, high school. So what was his other motive? I don't think he expected every kid to come out of there a judoka. So what was he thinking?
One of the mottos that he taught us and that I still think about to this day regarding the word judo actually means the gentle way in
Mm,
Japanese, or so
mm,
they say. The motto that he lived by, which came from that, was use your
Yeah,
head,
not your fists.
not your fist. Yeah.
right. And I think that's beautiful. I think that's wonderful. And I think that sort of sums up everything I know about him and everything I know about his family. You're some of the kindest, most nicest people I've ever met. And I'm not just saying that.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
well, we've been neighbors for a long, long time. And
I
before
know.
we
I
were
know.
neighbors, you and I worked near each other at the university.
I
And
know.
so I've had, firsthand experience of the kind of
Yeah.
family that you raised. So it was very nice.
You are listening to Bereaved But Still Me. If you have a question or comment that you would like addressed on our program, please send an email to Michael Lieben and Michael at bereavedbutstillme.com. That's Michael at bereavedbutstillme.com. This content is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The opinions expressed in the podcast are not those of Hearts Unite the Globe, but of the hosts and guests, and are intended to spark discussion about issues pertaining to congenital heart disease or bereavement.
It sounds as though Uri was a very, very special person. So what happened in his 40s that suddenly threw everything aside?
He was complaining of pains in his lower back, which were not surprising because when you are the mugger and people are fighting against you. They went away during Hanukkah, and I think they went to Eilat, Uri and the family, his wife and his 3 kids. And he was really, really miserable. And he went to the doctor, and they did blood tests, and they did all kinds of checking into what it could be, and they decided that I think that he was low on vitamin B12. To make a long story short, our youngest son, who's a doctor to this day, was doing an internship at Hadassah Hospital, and he heard what was going on with Uri, and he said, "You know what? Come into the emergency room. I'll sign you in. We want to get a good look at what's going on in your spine." So he did that. And our son Zeev, the youngest, was in the room as they were doing the CT of his spine and skull. And when he saw what was going on there, that it was just full of holes, he realized what it was. And Zeev says that at that point, well, here I go, I'm going to cry now. He left the room, went into the men's room, had himself a good cry, rolled up his sleeves and said, "Okay, we're going to get to work." And he set him up with a wonderful, wonderful team of doctors and nurses, and in the hematology or oncology department at Hadassah Hospital. And they took over. The kind of cancer that he had, it's called multiple myeloma. It's of the bone marrow. And the cells just grow. They just multiplied like crazy, and they have no place to go, so they punch holes in his. So with him, he had by then in his vertebrae and also in his skull, but he didn't have skull pains at the time. And he was at the time 43, and I always used to say that he was very, very precocious because the kind of cancer that he had usually is only found in people age 65 and over. And he was 43. So that's proof of being precocious.
Not only that, but instead of having just simple myeloma, you had to have multiple myeloma.
Yeah, Michael always used to say, "What, you couldn't get just one?
Just one.
I'd be multiple."
Oh my gosh. I imagine there's a certain amount of dark humor that attaches to this very, very
Oh,
early.
oh God, you wouldn't believe it. Yeah.
I would believe it. I would believe it. Do you want to talk about that, or do you want to put that to the side?
I think, let me just say something. It's more important than the humor was the positive attitude that
Yeah,
he and
sure.
his family all had while he was sick. Nobody knew what was going to happen, and they were told that there are a number of protocols, and don't worry about it because we know what we're doing. Some
Right.
people live 5 years, some people live 30 years. We never know. It's very individual, and we're just going to try one treatment after the other. Well, the first
Well,
one worked for about 13 months, I think. That was the best treatment he had. They harvested some of his white cells, and then I call it weaponized them to search out the bad blood cells, and they reinstalled it in his body, and that worked for 13 months. It was almost in total remission. But then it stopped working, and then the next treatment stopped working. And it was the roller coaster going up and down. Something would work for a month or 2 months or half a year, and then it would stop. And then you go on to the next one. So it was up and down, up and down, up and down all the time.
what are some of the treatments more specifically? Can you describe a couple?
Well, the last one that was supposed to be the super treatment for people who had been on 4 or 5 treatments that didn't work. It's a similar thing to the transplant. They harvest his white cells, and then they put him through this process. I don't know. It takes months. No, it didn't take months. It took
No, it's
weeks.
a few
Few weeks. And the thing is, it's not an off-the-shelf medicine. It's catered exactly to his body and his cancers. and it's supposed to be like the latest, the last word in hematology for people with this cancer. In the States, it cost $400,000.
Wow.
Here, Hadassah had developed their own procedure, and they were hoping to get the cost down to a mere $100,000. But because it was experimental, nobody paid anything in Uri's case, and that lasted what, a day?
No, a month.
A month. That lasted a month.
Yeah.
See, because
So
what I know about cancer treatments now is that they're much more individualized. And this
Exactly.
sounds to me like this is, specifically based on his
Exactly.
makeup.
he had biological treatments,
He had a bone marrow transplant.
Yeah.
I think the first year, and he was in the hospital. He was hospitalized in isolation for about a month because he had no immunity because they took out cells and they gave him massive doses of chemotherapy, and he felt awful. He looked awful, but then when they put it back in and they saw that it was working, he was feeling pretty good. And every time we would be so 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 hopeful, and then boom.
we had a joke that when he had no immune system, his mother was going to have to take him to the doctor and get his polio vaccinations and his whooping cough vaccinations and everything starting from scratch.
But they
Oh my
did, but they
gosh.
did. But I didn't take him. He went by himself.
So
No,
wait, I didn't know that. If you
because
do bone marrow, you have to go back and do all your vaccinations again, as if you never had them.
yes, 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 because he had
I didn't know that.
his entire immune system was
Wow.
wiped out.
They reset his immune system,
Yeah,
and so all the apps that you had have to be downloaded again.
Oh my gosh. I can't
yeah,
even imagine them.
yeah.
Now, he was a pioneer in developing treatments for patients with multiple myeloma. What does it mean to you that he was willing to let the doctors experiment on?
Well, first of all, he really had no choice because he had gone through all the standard treatments and nothing worked. So there was nothing else to try except experiments. And he got in these experiments because the head doctor there was well connected to all these cancer centers around the world, and he was able to get him treatments. That he was the only
Wow.
one in Israel getting them, or one of two people getting them. And they were very enthusiastic and tried very much to help him with these
Wow.
experiments. And Uri was, of course, very glad to help for two reasons. One, maybe it'll help him. And two, if it
Mhm.
doesn't help him, maybe it'll help somebody else by proving or disproving some of these treatments.
So he's done all of this experimentation. He's participated in all these programs. A lot of them didn't work, but is there something positive in that for other people that it didn't work? And the answer, I suppose, is yes.
Yep, yep.
Does it
Yeah,
does it make
the
you feel
fact,
any better?
in some ways, yes. I mean, it's still terrible that he passed away, and it's a little, has really doesn't have much to do with our grief about him. But yes, I mean, it's a positive thing that up until the end, he was fighting like crazy, and if he couldn't do it for himself, he was helping other people.
If you've enjoyed listening to this program, please visit our website, heartsunitetheglobe.org, and make a contribution. This program is a presentation of Hearts Unite the Globe and is part of the Hug Podcast Network. Hearts Unite the Globe is a nonprofit organization devoted to providing resources to the congenital heart defect community to educate, empower, and enrich the lives of our community members. If you would like access to free resources pertaining to the CHD community, please visit our website at congenitalheartdefects.com for information about CHD, hospitals that treat CHD survivors, summer camps for CHD families, and much, much more. It can be very painful as parents to watch our children suffer and then succumb to their diseases. What advice do you have for other parents who have children with cancer?
Well, I've been thinking about this, and I read something lately which it was really harmonized with me. There are two things there: grief and consolation. And the grief is always there.
Yeah.
You can't get rid of it, and you never will. Time
Mhm.
sometimes makes it easier, but the longing and going to visit the cemetery, it just gets you every time. It can't not do it. But
Uh-huh.
then there's consolation. People who come to to console you after the funeral, and the number of people that were at the funeral, and the things that people said about Uri at the funeral, the eulogies, and the fact that Uri's values have been passed on to his kids extremely, extremely well. I mean, he lives on in his children.
That's good.
They're, his values were strongly identified as a Jewish male in Israel and all of what that meant. And the kids are really carrying that forward. We learned a lot about Judaism in his life, and the kids have all had strong Jewish educations. There was a thing about respect that I felt from Uri towards me. This came across in two ways. Once about every week or every other week, we would have a date. Either we go out for coffee or lunch or whatever, and we'd have these serious conversations about life and about the children and about the cancer and all kinds of stuff. And the other example that comes to mind is on my 75th birthday, where he took me away to Scotland. We both enjoy a good drink of Scotch whiskey, and we had many drinks of Scotch whiskey over a 3-day period in Edinburgh. And it was a lot of fun, and it was a lot of just quality time, the two of us being together, and I'll always remember that.
That's beautiful. Elisheva, do you have something to add there?
Well, what Michael was just saying now just brought a glimpse of the funeral. The last person to speak at the funeral was Uri's daughter, who this month will be 22.
Wow.
Over the years, Uri got many, many, many transfusions, either of blood, whole blood, or of just white cells. And his daughter ended her little eulogy with asking people to please give platelets. Please go to the hospital, because Uri was always able to get them, of course, from strangers. And please, people, be aware that they are very, very much needed and very welcome. And soon after he died, they had a day of donation where I sent notices to everybody that we know, and they sent notices to everybody they know, and people actually came out and gave in his memory. And it looks to me like we're going to be doing that once a year on the anniversary of his death, have a session where people can go and donate their blood and or their platelets in his memory.
Well, you've just run headlong into my next question. What do you do, or maybe what else do you do as a family to keep Uri alive in your lives?
Well, think about him all the time. I mean,
Yep.
every single day. If an hour goes by that I haven't thought about him, it means I was sleeping. I have questions I have to ask him, things I want to tell him. It's just, and Uri would do this, and if Uri were here, he would do that. And it's just really, really amazing how much even, and just things pop into my brain when I'm even concentrating on something else and doing my work or involved in something else. I'll get a flashback of something from the funeral or from the shiva or during one of his hospitalizations, or when he was, the mugger that the women came to beat up. Just flashbacks from, he died 1 month short of his 51st birthday. So
Wow.
things that happened over 51 years, it's just incredible. And he's very much alive for me like that.
There's one thing I wanted to say. It's not really on topic, but it's funny. We
Sure.
were in New York in May, and I was standing in line for like 2.5 hours at TKTS, buying half-price tickets to Broadway shows.
Right.
And the people behind me were talking about making arrangements for Passover. Now, Passover would be next April or next May, and here we are in June, or in May, excuse me. So we're talking about a year in advance. So I turned around and I said, "Hey, you people really plan in advance?" And they said, "Well, yeah, we want to go to Camp Ramah in Georgia, where they have this great week, and we want to make sure that we get tickets." And I said, "Oh, Camp Ramah in Georgia. My son used to go there. He was there for his family was there for 6 years. Every summer, and they were doing all kinds of jobs there, and the kids were campers and stuff." And he asked me, he said, "Who's your son?" And I said, "Uri." And he goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that he passed away."
Wow.
Now, this is in the middle of New York City. I didn't know them. They didn't know me. And all of a sudden, boom.
Wow.
Small
Wow.
world, huh? Small world.
Very small world. Very small world. And news travels fast.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Lastly,
Yeah.
we know that there are many parents who have lost children for a variety of reasons. And you and I, we belong to a club that no one wants to be a member of, but here we are. And that's proof that these things happen. What advice can you give to other parents who have lost children And what can they do to move forward after such a tremendous loss?
Well, it's a cliche to say count your blessings, and we have a lot of blessings. We have 11 grandchildren, 3 sons, 4 daughters-in-law. We've built a new life in Israel and all that, and we've got ourselves. But
Hmm.
it's kind of a cliche, though. I mean, it doesn't really help. People say to you, but you've got good things in your life. You say, yes, they do. Yes, we do. But
Michael, I want to say something right there. I have in recent years caught myself looking back over things, looking back over my life and thinking what a great life it's been and how blessed I was. And then I say, oh, wait a minute. But it is really possible. It's as cliche as you think it sounds. It is really possible to feel that you have been blessed throughout your life, despite the most terrible losses. And that's something that I believe is really important. And if you're discovering that now, this early, think what you will. As cliche as it sounds to you, it's happened to me, and I've caught myself thinking what a great life I've had. And objectively, I guess it has been, but there's been some pretty big holes there. So I'm going to throw that into the mix for you.
Okay. One of the things that struck me all along the road, the ugly road that we were on with him, is that sometimes in families, when a young parent dies and leaves little kids and another parent, it's awful. I
Yeah.
was thanking God all the time that his kids were not babies when this happened.
Yep.
They
Yep.
were 16, 19, and almost 22, because they have memories of him, and he lives on in them. And my heart, without even knowing them, my heart goes out to any family where a parent dies and leaves little kids. So from that point of view, we were really, really lucky.
there's a saying in Hebrew, you should live to 120, which
Right.
means you should live to a ripe old age. Well,
Hmm.
Uri passed away at the age of 50. So I figure he's going to be reincarnated, and he's going to have at least another 50 years of bringing as much good to the world as he had when he was really alive. So who knows?
I
Maybe he'll
certainly
come
hope
back.
so.
Maybe he'll come back as a black belt. I don't know. Who knows what he'll do
I certainly hope so, Michael.
No,
I
maybe
hope
he'll come
so.
back with a gold medal from
from
the
the Olympics.
Olympics.
Yeah.
Maybe so. Maybe so. I just want to say what to you in public, what I said to you privately a little while ago is that your silence, your nobility is moving. People who don't know you would not know that you have suffered this tremendous loss. You have remained some of the most jovial people I know, some of the kindest people I know, and you carry yourselves with a certain presence. You and I and too many people of our neighbors and people that we know have been through this at a stunningly early age for some of them. And I think it's a club that none of us want to be in, but we handle it the best we can. And you people are, Michael and Elisheva are exemplary and in some sense a model. I hope that nobody really has to model themselves after any
Thank
of
you.
us.
Yeah.
But
And then
but
nobody
but
comes to us for advice.
well, they do and they don't. There was another family who I won't mention, but they don't go to shivas and funerals anymore. But they came to mine. They came
Oh,
to
wow.
our shiva for Liel because they knew us and because they knew our family. But they came and they did come with advice and they did come with things to say. And it is important to hear from those of us who have been there. And I hope that your words today will land somewhere in our listenership, give them some sort of comfort. And if anybody would like to get in touch, they should write to the program and we'll see what we can do. This is something I think we need to expand. We need to talk more about. So I want to thank you both for joining
Okay.
us on Bereaved But
Okay.
Still Me,
Thank you.
Michael and
As they say, thank you for having us.
Michael and Elisheva Lahav, two of the nicest people you could ever want to know. And that concludes this episode of Bereaved But Still Me. I want to thank Elisheva and Michael for sharing their experience with us. Please join us at the beginning of the month for a brand new podcast, and I'll be with you soon. But until then, please remember, moving forward is not moving away.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you have felt supported in your grief journey. Bereaved But Still Me is a monthly podcast. and a new episode is released on the first Thursday of each month. You can hear our podcast anywhere you normally listen to podcasts at any time. Join us again next month for a brand new episode of Bereaved But Still Me.